Olin Breivik was overstimulated, hungry. His breakfast spot of choice was out of the brioche bread he liked, so he'd settled for coffee and an apple tart instead of his usual sandwich, and now his head was pounding. A heat started to build at the back of his eyes. He knew he had to refocus all of his attention to the front of the room, or he'd follow his gut instinct through the small crowd gathered in Emily Weaver's Malibu home, right to the plant-based spread in the other room. He needed hearty food to get him through the rest of the day, and he'd get it. He just wouldn't be all that great at small talk until then. He blinked and studied the suit Jose Garza was wearing. The frontrunner for the next governor of California knew how to command a room. He already had Olin's support. They'd spoken privately several times when Garza was in the house about social media platforms and their role in national security. Typically, Olin would have just sent a sizable donation and stayed far away from these types of gatherings. But that was before he'd met Xeni Everly Wilkins. 2 years ago, the wife of his friend's friend, well, technically the wife of his friend's bandmate, had come into an estate. Like most, her friends and her family were regular income people who didn't need to know about trusts and investments and how to leverage insurance. But Xeni had hopped up a few dozen tax brackets, and she wanted some advice from someone who'd made a similar leap. Someone she could trust. Enter Olin. They'd met for lunch and ended up talking about more than just money. Xeni told him her whole story. How her aunt had really been her birth mother, a famous R&B singer who owned all her masters and some pretty nice pieces of property. It was all Xeni's now, and while she knew she would take care of her family and a few friends, she wanted to make sure she was actually giving back, too. Olin had only been retired for about 18 months at that point, and had already committed himself to staying out of the public eye. Getting Depot off the ground and bringing it all the way to IPO had taken a lot out of him. He wanted to lay low and spend time with his dad and his brothers. But after Xeni asked what exactly he'd planned to do for the next 50-some-odd years, Olin realized he should probably do more than just send cash to the cause. He and Xeni made a pact that day. If she showed up, he'd show up. Some things they attended separately. What with him being a white guy and her being a black woman, Olin didn't need to be front and center at a Black Girls Code luncheon, but they always linked up after to debrief. Which local women's organization could use more funds and more hands on deck?